Welcome, brothers, to the pod. We are the two peas in a pod. We're back again. Episode 7, would you believe? 7 being an important number for this month as well. Very auspicious for the deathguard players.
It's a dirty number.
That's Ben you can hear. I'm Dan.
I'm Ben.
And we are back again. So tonight, what are we going to talk about tonight, Ben?
I've got lots of things to talk about tonight.
Loads of stuff to go through. So we're going to go in the hobby desk, as we always do. I finished more Khorne stuff, and Ben is lamenting that as ever. And he has...
very good.
Ben has opened up his Dark Imperium and is beavering away on that. Going into the Galaxy of War, I have bought one of the 30th anniversary Marines that has split the internet, divided popular opinion,
and divided us.
Divided us and cast chaos across the miniatures collecting community. So we're going to talk a bit about him, and also about the codexes that have been we've been told now are coming up. Then into the mortal realms, yet more gaming, yet more being beaten for my Khorne army, so some stuff to talk about there. It won't surprise you to learn I've used the Warlord edition now, and I want to talk about that. Sorry for those of you that are getting bored of my excitement on that. And I'm going to talk about a new project that I'm looking to start for Age of Sigmar as well. And then we're going hail to the community, so... stuff to talk about there. The painting competition. Hopefully, if you've been following the Facebook, you know Ben's getting involved with that with his family. And the Warhammer Heroes, which is a new initiative from Games Workshop. We're very excited to hear about. I think it's a cracking idea. And finally, we delve into the wilds. Ben is very excited about the Fallout miniatures game that's coming up. I, in my naivety, was like, what's that? What's that? Which just shows that I really... don't have a clue outside of the miniatures market, and I don't have much of a clue in there, so very worrying. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for joining us. I have genuinely got my cup of coffee right here. Grab yourself some refreshments. We'll be back soon on the hobby desk.
Hi guys, welcome back. We've just been hugely distracted, tipped over a pile of goblins, and Dan's trying to find Ghazghkull Thracker on eBay. But other than that, we're back.
And fight off the demonic presence that is in my hobby.
Oh, the daddy longlegs.
Yeah, flipping heck. It's flying into the side of my head.
It's been a bit of a dramatic interlude.
Back, ye beast of Nurgle!
So we're here to talk about what's on our hobby desks. Dan, you've had quite a productive couple of weeks, haven't you?
At last, yeah.
Finished your clown wagons.
I just want to let everybody that's listening know I am being bullied by Ben. I am an innocent chaos worshipping warlord. And
said no man ever.
Literally rings me up and terrorizes me with these kind of insults.
Yeah.
So very sad about that.
But they're looking ace.
So the clown wagon. So my skull cannons are now done at last. They were quite a long project. Just a lot of time really, highlighting up the reds, etc., etc. But I got those done. I'm really pleased with them. Really pleased with how they look.
Yeah.
They're magnetized now and in the storage crates. And off the back of that, I've used the momentum to get my 2 Forge Fiends that I picked up a few weeks ago. They're built.
Who look nothing like squatting toads.
Yeah, here we go again. See?
Well, they do without the heads and arms.
Yeah, well, they are they're in sub-assemblies, because Captain Sub-Assembly told me so. I'm quite pleased, actually, with the progress. So the main red armour has been base coated, shaded, and the first base coat put back on with the airbrush. And the sort of lighter demonic areas of red just have one highlight to go. I'm doing 2 of them at the same time. The construction was interesting. I've tried to vary them a bit. They're quite monopose, the miniature itself.
Yeah.
So the main bulk of the model is clearly sort of turning itself towards the right, and that makes it hard to You know, if you've got one miniature that's turning to the right and then have another one also turning to the right.
Yeah.
It's difficult to try and stop that. But I've managed to get one sort of, you know, almost stalking along quite low, and the other one's reared up, going to be firing its cannons. So I'm quite pleased with that. I'm quite enjoying painting them. I'm hoping to get them done quite rapidly. I want to get those done and 24 more cultists.
All right, yeah.
Into the army, because we're going to talk when we get to the Galaxy of War a bit about stratagems, but that gives me enough troops choices to unlock the larger battalion.
Yes. Yeah.
Organization, which gives me the nine command points plus 3 that you get anyway. So want to do that, and I think it will look cool because you'll have 48 cultists on the board, and against 16 berserkers. So I think it'll have a good dynamic for
have a nice aesthetic to
bods
it
versus Space Marines. I hope so. Really pleased with the progress this week.
Because on that board in Warhammer World, in the big room where it's the Ultramarines versus Chaos, I love those cultists being kind of ushered forward by the Khorne warriors. I think it's great.
Yeah, that board is what's inspired this army.
Really?
Yeah, so, precisely it was on that board was the first time I saw the Khitan engine.
Yeah.
So I'm not a huge fan of the... see, I can't even remember what it's called. The Khorne Lawnmower of Doom. I actually can't remember. It's funny, actually. Dan Wasley couldn't believe that we didn't just edit out when I couldn't remember what Wanderers he was using.
Yeah, but dude, we can't remember the names for everything. It's like we're two people suffering from dementia.
It's, yeah. But anyway, that massive Khorne engine. Oh, Lord of Skulls. There we go. Yeah. No, it's not actually hard to remember, is it? Khorne Lord of Skulls.
It's going to be the Khorne Lawnmower from now on, mate.
Yeah. I'm not that keen on that,
no.
As you can tell. But this is... The Khitan is it, but with legs instead, which, personally, I think would have been the way to go all along. But, hey-ho, doesn't matter. They do that now as Forge World. So, really wanted one of them, and then built an army to facilitate getting one of them. And, yeah, it kind of went from there, really, and it keeps growing. And it's nice that the Demon side ports over to the Age of Sigmar.
Yeah.
Really nicely. Because when we get into the Mortal Realms, we'll talk about what my experience is with those and what I want to add. But needless to say, I'm going to be painting some more demons in the near future.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what about you then? You've unboxed. Let me guess. You've unboxed Dark Imperium. You've been blown away by the Deathguard miniatures, and you've sold your soul to Nurgle, and are eagerly painting up loads of Deathguard, and spraying all your Space Wolves green.
No, sorry, no. Before we go on to Dark Imperium, I did want to go back and brush over something you mentioned about the kits being quite monopose. I've actually started to find that increasingly that seems to be more and more common. Certainly looking in the through the new Primaris boxes, while they are lots of ways of constructing them, the poses themselves are quite set because the hips and the legs are attached to the torso. And I'm not sure whether I'm disappointed by that, because actually by doing that, it allows them to make a more quality model, if you know what I mean. Gives them a chance to put more detail onto it without thinking, oh no, that'll make it really difficult to construct. I think it's quite a different approach that they're taking, and I personally think it's quite a good one. I'm not that sad to see the back of the completely posable stuff. I don't know about what you think.
Yeah, well, for me, my question is, are they either A, slower to build, B, quicker to build, or C, the same?
Yes. Probably the same.
You think the same?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, well, I'll probably take it, leave it then. Basically, if it's quicker to build, then I'd be all for it. But like you say, if it does allow the quality to go up. I mean, there's no doubting. I know, obviously, it was produced a while ago, but if you remember the old Space Marine Commander box, I don't know if it's still,
it's still around.
current,
Yep.
actually. Yeah. So if you compare him to, say, for example, the Primaris Commander or Captain that's recently come out,
it's a massive difference.
worlds of difference. Worlds of difference. And mostly around, like, almost believability, like from an anatomy kind of way.
Yeah.
The pose, it just didn't seem to matter how you built that commander, Space Marine Commander. He just looked a bit odd. So the parts in there were really good. So I used loads of the parts converting things.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
But him himself, he always ended up in these weird poses. Whereas that guy, that Primaris guy, that is just a stunning miniature.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can see exactly what you're saying. And to be honest, I've got a sneaking suspicion that they might be a little quicker to build, but I'll have to put myself out and buy some just to find out. For the listeners.
Yeah.
For the listeners.
So yeah, well, what have I been doing? I have been working my way through the Dark Imperium box set, primarily because I just couldn't restrain myself anymore. It was I just desperately wanted to get a decent section of my older Space Wolves done, because I've been wanting to do an army of Space Wolves for so long. And the ones that I've done are the box sets, the 3 squads that I've done now are the box sets that I got as a present from the staff when I left Games Workshop Plymouth. So they meant...
Yeah, I was going to say that. I thought, I'm sure that's what happened.
Yeah. There's a few other models to do from that kind of gift giving, and for me they're really special because that was a really cool time in my life.
Can I just ask, actually, was it a gift like when you left, or was it to get you to leave?
Yeah, it was to get me to leave probably. But I kind of felt like, in a way, as much as having those models done was cool, the army was missing something, and that's to kind of keep current with what's going on. And there's so many nice new models out, and I don't care what anyone says about the Primaris. The one thing that I just will not accept is an argument that the models are bad, because they're just not. They're really not. They're stunning. And I've enjoyed every minute of putting them together. And I've been converting them gently to, not overwhelmingly, but gently to make them Space Wolf. I've put a few of those pictures up. And I'm really happy with how they're turning out, actually. I'm still a bit dubious as to how I'm going to paint them, which is holding me back a little bit, because obviously the squad markings for Space Wolves are a lot different from other chapters.
I've got a selection of colours you could use.
Yeah.
Khorne red.
Khorne red, yeah.
Mephiston red.
Yep.
With to get your base coat down, and then Khorne red over the top of that. Abaddon black, but then with Khorne red over that.
Yep. Yeah.
I think some reasonable suggestions there.
I think it's really important that you did explain to me the exact colour scheme you used for me to put the dead bodies at their feet. So that's useful. I can listen back to it now.
Absolutely. Well, there's a Space Wolf helmet on one of my rhinos.
Yeah. So, because like I said, the Space Wolves are slightly different. So the big one for me is the Inceptors. When you read Dark Imperium, the Space Wolf who's in the Inceptor squad is not a rookie. He's not a Bloodclaw. And traditionally those kind of I forgot what they're called, but the Sky something Space Wolves. Skyclaws, that's it. They're Bloodclaws. And I just can't see the Inceptors being Bloodclaws, and I've seen some people paint them up with the Bloodclaw stuff on their shoulder pad, but that just doesn't fit to me. So if anything, you got the impression...
Yeah, it'd be interesting.
Yeah, so I'm going to leave the shoulder pads blank, I think, until the Space Wolf Codex comes out. I'm kind of hoping it will before the end of the year. But
yeah, it'll be interesting to see whether they put in whole new pack designations.
Yes.
So, like, for example, so at the moment you've got Bloodclaws, Grey Hunters, Long Fangs, and Wolfguard, haven't you?
And Scouts.
So it'll be interesting to... Sorry, and Scouts, yes, sorry. It'll be interesting to see whether they put in a new one.
Yeah.
Or they simply go for something like... So, as I understand it, the reason that Bloodclaws have the jump packs is because they're, like, full of the, spirit of youth, as it were, and
Yep.
like all gung ho. And by the time they get to Grey Hunters, they kind of feel it's a bit silly to go flying around in the sky and not very dignified. And by the time it's Longfangs, they're just shaking their heads and being like, "Oh my goodness."
Well, that's
so they might
sort of true. In that,
Sorry?
That's sort of true in that that's the case for most companies, but there are occasionally companies where they embrace the jetpack.
Well, that's what I'm thinking, is are they going to do something like, well, actually, some of the Inceptors, they are Grey Hunters, but they're the ones that sort of showed this kind of desire to go whizzing around. But then again, I don't know, really. It's interesting. The whole Primaris thing is interesting because depending on where... So, in Dark Imperium, the Primaris have only been with the Imperium. Well, no. They've only been a known entity within the Imperium for about 100 years.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
I suppose that's important because whilst I've seen it cited on a few places, oh, well, how can there be veteran... I think this came up with the 30th anniversary, dude. How can there be a veteran Sergeant Primaris?
Yep.
Because they've only been around for 100 years. But actually, there's background that suggests that the Primaris have been operating on and off for a very long time.
Yeah, they've been taken out for select missions to see whether they worked or not. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, I mean, one of the things they haven't clarified and was only ever mentioned on the kind of Q&As with, what's-his-face, the games designer.
Yes, that famous games designer, what's-his-face.
Yeah, what's-his-face. My name, seriously, me and names is terrible. Anyway.
Are you talking about Jervis?
No, the one who designed
Pete?
40k 8th edition. Oh, what's he called? Oh, it's just getting embarrassing now. I'm going to move on. So he mentioned that an existing Space Marine can be upgraded to be a Primaris, and it hasn't been mentioned since, so that hasn't been clarified, but, we'll see. Anyway, so that was that. I'll put that book away. And the other thing I'm quite excited about is moving on to some sort of picking around with some scenery, getting ready for Necromunda, and possibly Fallout, which we'll cover later. I remember Necromunda is the first game, or the game that encouraged me to make my own scenery. So I'm going to, brush that kind of idealism off again and start going for it, because I think some of the hand-built gang camps and that sort of stuff are really, really cool. So I've already haven't done anything yet other than bought a few of the new scenery box sets and had a tinker with them. But I'm looking around for pictures. I'm trying to find some inspiration for what I'm going to do.
I remember seeing in one of the old copies of possibly Inferno, or the Citadel Journal, or one of those, a vertical Necromunda table, which was made out of polystyrene sheets, and that was so inspirational. That really grabbed me, to be honest.
Yeah,
as being what I'd like to do.
Yeah.
I think something like that, a bit more height to it, would be really nice.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned scenery, actually, because somebody kindly commented on a picture of one of the battles I've played recently where on the snowy terrain.
Oh, yeah.
Say they really liked it.
The one that we played our battle on when you came down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I must admit, I quite like it, and I'm looking to add to it a bit. But they asked about the big ice shards.
Yeah.
And I gave a bit of response there, and I said I would expand on it a bit in this episode. So essentially, all it is it's called extruded polystyrene or high density polystyrene. So it's a lot tougher. It's quite hard to find,
it's
unless
really
you
hard
want to
to
buy
find.
it in massive bulk. So if you buy it in like huge bulk, but you're talking about spending like 200 quid and getting a pallet of it delivered. So sometimes it turns up, and these two sheets turned up in B&Q every now and then. I think it must just be that the people that make it do a deal, and B&Q are like, yeah, we'll have some of that. So I've had a couple of sheets of it, and all I've done really is using a hot wire cutter, because they're amazing, is just sculpt these big pointed spears out of it, and then painted them with PVA with a bit of sand in to try and give them some strength.
Yeah.
Sprayed them in the Fang colour.
Best colour.
And best colour, and then used white just to go over them. And I always make up sort of a weird rocky mixture to blend everything in. And Ben, I don't know if you remember, there was a picture of me at like 2:00 in the morning in Games Workshop Plymouth when I was a staff member, pretending to eat a bowl of this mixture of rocks and sand. Yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah, I think I probably took the picture.
Yeah, and we were slapping it on that Lord of the Rings board we made, and it's
that
really
board was so good.
Yeah, it just helped blend the edges together.
Yeah, that's just paint and sand, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, it's just and stones and rocks, and it gives everything. I always base scenery, always, because I think you can put a little bit on there. You know, at the end of the day, it's going to be if you take a ruined building, it's going to be really hard unless you built the building and then knocked it down.
Yeah.
To capture all of the ruins that you'd want.
Yeah.
And also, it will make it hard to position your miniatures.
Yeah. But
just by having a board and then, you know, putting the outline of the building, even out of like fallen stones and rocks, and a little corner here and a few little barrels there, it just gives it something more for me.
Yeah.
And you get that mix then between the realism, which is very time consuming and perhaps not practical from a gaming perspective, and the sort of, I've got this ruin and it's not on a base and I've plonked it on the board, which for me, it loses some of the immersion a little bit.
Yeah.
I like a board, much like I like an army, really. I like an army to look coherent and together, and it's the same with the board. I like it to look together.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit about scenery anyway. You said you wanted to talk about scenery and I've hijacked it. Sorry.
No, well, it's not unusual for me to struggle to get a word in edgeways, but...
Whoa! Totally fair.
But no, I think we're going into an era where I'm expecting to see some really awesome scenery coming from people's hobby desks, because take for example Ian's collection of the news scenery. His board looks amazing, and that is, with complete respect, just taken out of the box, and he's just done a great job of painting it up. But I'm expecting now with the release of Necromunda and various other things for that to really take off for a little while, because I think scenery building was a huge part of Necromunda, which we will go on to in the next section, I think, which is a perfect time to transition, I think, isn't it, Dan?
I think so indeed. So we're going to go into the Galaxy of War next, talking about a few bits and bobs, so grab yourself something to keep you going. We're only just started, so hopefully no one's drifting off just yet. But we look forward to meeting you in the Galaxy of War. Welcome back, brothers. Prepare your weapons, the pod thunders ever onwards, and we enter the Galaxy of War. So, today, we need to talk about it, Ben.
Do we have to?
We need to talk about that Marine.
Uh-huh.
Go on, then. Say your piece.
I just think it's boring, dude. Okay. Are you going to be a child about this all the way through?
Did you? No, go on. You go on.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. I think it's boring. So
go on then. Go on. I'll stop now. I genuinely won't do that again.
So what I think about it that's good, I think it's a lovely Primaris model. I think I would like it in my army if it, as a Primaris model. I don't think that it fits the bill as a model for the 30th edition or 30th anniversary of Warhammer 40k. What have we had in the past? We've had the Imperial Space Marine. We've had the Crimson Fist holding the Orc's head from the front of the original book. We had Harry the Hammer for Warhammer Fantasy, and then you get a sergeant. We've also had the captain from the front of the second edition box. They could have done so many.
Oh yeah, he was a Games Day miniature, wasn't he? He was really nice.
Yeah, I just think I know what you're going to say, and I think they are valid opinions about how it represents where we are in the hobby and the release of the Space Marine Primaris and all of those things. But I think the thing that strikes me about it is that even when you have the picture of it on the like the Primaris battalion buy thing on the website, it almost gets lost in the rest of the Primaris. And I think it will get lost on the battlefield. I think when it's on the battlefield, it's just going to get lost. And the fact that you would be willing to put it on the battlefield is an interesting thought in its own right, because I haven't put any other special edition model of mine on the battlefield. They stay in the cabinet, or in my case, the box, unpainted.
Yeah.
But the point is that I think they've missed a trick, really. I think 40k this year has been phenomenal. I think it's been absolutely brilliant. I'm loving the new game. I'm loving the new rules. I've been completely re-energized about it. I've bought into the Primaris. I'm starting to love them. I'm loving collecting and painting them. And yet that just doesn't, for me, capture that feeling at all. It feels a little bit underwhelming. So there you go. That's my view on it.
Sorry? Sorry.
It's fallen asleep.
No, I completely understand what you're saying, and you know that because initially that was my sort of feelings as well. But what I've come to feel about that model is like you say, I really do think it sums up where we are right now. 30th year of Warhammer 40k saw the Primaris Marines get introduced into the galaxy.
Yeah.
And that guy, it goes back a bit to that big long thing I had about they're not just Space Marines when Primaris first came out, ironically.
Yes. Yeah.
And I felt like it made Space Marines. So, yes, on one sense, he is just a Space Marine Sergeant, but a Space Marine Sergeant or a Primaris Space Marine Sergeant is a pretty epic thing. And your point, you make the point he gets lost on the battlefield, and yeah, some people will use him on the battlefield, and I think it's important that he appeals to some people who might want, he's usable on the battlefield, but mine's certainly not. That's not my plan. My plan is to paint him up and almost capture, I suppose, what my painting level's like now as well. I think looking back in the future, he'll be a great reminder of what happened in the 30th year of Warhammer 40,000. And the reason I don't think he needs to be some ostentatious example of model making is that most miniatures now that are coming out for 40k are those things. Mortarion will be a fantastic example in the future of what happened in the 30th year of Games Workshop. The deathguard will be fantastic examples. Roboot Gilliman will be a fantastic example of what happened. There's loads of great miniatures that will have that mantle. This guy didn't need to be that. I really don't think he did, and I think by being it's almost powerful in its simplicity for me personally, and it stands up nicely against the idea of the Imperial Space Marine because he was really cool as well. So I've got 2 Imperial Space Marines, and I'm genuinely considering getting 2 of these guys because I want to have one in a box as the collector part of me, and I want to paint one up. And I'm going to paint up one of my Imperial Space Marines in the same colours.
Have you decided what colours you're going to paint them yet?
No, Ultramarines is really high up my list, as you would imagine, because I do really like the Ultramarines, and for me they sum up what Space Marines are, but there's an opportunity to do something different, because I'm not intending to do an army of them. Yeah.
That's exactly why I did the Lamenters for my competition model, because it's an opportunity to do something different, something that I haven't done yet, something that challenges me or captures something about the hobby that I haven't explored yet.
To be honest, that model, every time I see it, it blows me away, mate. You've done so... Yeah, especially considering, I can remember we were having a conversation really when we started the podcast about weathering.
Yes.
What it looked like, how you did it.
Yeah.
And you look at the chipping and stuff that you've pulled off on there, and it doesn't look like you've only known about weathering for 3 months.
Yeah. I've been working hard on it.
I've always felt you've got, when you're painting, you've got that extra level of patience and brush control as well. So those things always stand you in good stead with your painting, and he does look fantastic. He really does.
Oh, thanks, Steve.
But yes,
I'm really
that's
chuffed with him.
Yeah, well,
but he was based off of one thing, and I don't know if anyone's seen it, but it's a piece of artwork where there's a Lamentus helmet on I think it's a staff or a piece of wood, with a bunch of purity seals on, in the same way that you get like used to have Narm helmets on the top of M16s on graves.
Mm-hmm.
And that I just loved that. It's so simple, and it's just a helmet. And I loved it, and that's what inspired me to do that model. And for me, I think that the Space Marine, the 30th edition one, I'm going to paint as an Iron Snake, because that book inspired me to paint an entire chapter of them. And I don't want to do too much to him, because I don't want to sort of compromise the model. So I don't want to turn him into a Space Wolf, if you see what I mean. Because he doesn't look like a Space Wolf to me.
No.
He looks more...
I'm really pleased to hear that you're going to do him as an Iron Snake. I was really pleased when I read that, because they just... I remember when you did your Iron Snakes,
yeah,
and how much inspiration you took from one novel, and that novel is really very, very good.
Yes, it is. And if you haven't read it, read it. If anyone's listening to this.
Yeah, absolutely. But Iron Snakes also, they're like, when I think of Ben, you think Space Wolves because you kind of look like one, and and Iron Snakes. You know, Iron Snakes is a really memorable thing in the hobby that I remember about what you've done in your hobby.
Yeah.
So that's really ace to see. And that's what I really like about the model. I would really urge people, you know, that might be thinking, oh no, it's too boring, I'm not paying 20 quid for that. Get one, because in 10 years, it'll be such a great memento, especially if you paint it up separate to your army, because you'll have loads of Space Marines and cool models from this era, but that guy's a little memory.
Yeah.
And I really like him for that. Unsurprisingly.
Well, we've spent 10 minutes talking about a single model, so I think we ought to move on to something else, because we wanted to talk about the upcoming codexes. So this month we've got deathguard and Mechanicum. I'm really excited about Mechanicum because I think we're going to see a lot more of those wicked little kind of bonuses for the subsects, like you did with the Space Marine chapters and the Chaos chapters. So you'll have different Forge worlds having different characters.
Yeah, that'd be good.
And I think that's going to be really, really cool. And I'm hoping they're going to expand out the background in there to talk about how Mars has a certain aesthetic and a certain way of going to war, and maybe, you know, Armageddon has a different way. So I'm really excited to see that. And I love the Mechanicum army. I've purposefully not bought the last Mechanicum book or any of the models because I just can't do another project because I know I would go nuts with it, because I think they look really, really cool. So I'm really excited about that. It'd be
really nice if they redid, if they push the different subsects, which I'm certain they will based on what we've seen.
Yeah.
It'd be lovely if they went back and reproduced the transfer sheets for them.
Yes, it would.
Because with the best will in the world, you know, freehanding those symbols consistently across an army is really tough.
Yep, yes.
And it can't be hard. The designs are done. Even if they sold them just through Forge World as a specialist thing for people that are maybe a bit more advanced or what have you.
Yeah.
Because I think transfers are disappearing from boxes, as we've said, or seem to be in the past. And perhaps part of that is because they're not the simplest thing. If you're new to the hobby and you don't understand transfers, you know, I can remember putting them on and getting so annoyed because they just always fall off.
Yeah.
Always fall off on Space Marine shoulders, particularly, because they didn't fit. And you're forever seeing posts on the web about that. Now, I know, and you know, and many people will know, that Microsol, Microset, bit of gloss varnish, and you can have a transfer that looks like you've painted it on. You know, it's completely possible. But Microsol and Microset are vicious products from a chemical point of view that are unlikely to be seen in the Games Workshop. And I'm sorry, I don't often, decry, but this business to do with Blammy and Medium, no, I'm sorry, it doesn't achieve what Microsol and Microset do.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what the idea is. But then for me, put the transfers on the web or put them through Forge World.
Yeah.
And it's really disappointing seeing them. It's one of the few things that really does disappoint me is seeing the transfers disappearing, because it's such a nice way to personalise your army.
But people will fill that gap. There are other companies who are filling that gap.
Yeah, that's true. There are. Are there really other miniatures companies? No. I don't believe you.
So what do you think is going to be in the deathguard book?
I think there will be some death and some guard.
Yeah, but do you think they're going to have those different deathguard warbands having different rules? Or do you think...
Ooh, good question.
Or do you think you're going to have different sort of build styles that are encouraged? So you could have like a zombie-based deathguard army or a marine-based deathguard army, or...
You won't see... Well, yeah, you'll have the blight... What are they called? Blightwalkers?
Poxwalkers.
Poxwalkers.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you'll be able to do all of that. It'd be interesting to see if they do different warbands and how they distinguish them.
Yeah. I think that could be quite an interesting way to go. But I got a sneaking suspicion they're not going to.
No, because it is Codex Deathguard.
Yeah, it's very specific anyway. Oh my
goodness. This Chaos Spawn thing has come back. Get away!
Oh, your Daddy Longlegs attack.
Yeah.
Yeah. Grown man beaten by spindly-legged beast.
Mate, it's frightening. It's good. It's nearly 4 inches across.
I'm sure it is. Okay. It's a flying tarantula in your bedroom.
Oh my days, it's coming right at me.
Right, so while Dan's getting attacked, I think we will move on to...
So Deathguard wise...
Oh, do we have to?
Think you're... Yeah, no. I think you're right. I'm not sure we will see it, just because it is Codex Deathguard.
Yeah.
The Deathguard. It's not Codex Plague Marines or Codex Nurgle.
Yeah, that's very true.
So, yeah, obviously, I think we've probably seen a lot of the miniatures that are going to be in there, which makes me a little sad, but that's just how it works now. You know, you do see a lot of it ahead of time. Be lovely to open White Dwarf when it arrives, and find something that I've not already seen, although I think that's very unlikely.
That's becoming increasingly uncommon now. There's so many releases done before I get my hands on the White Dwarf that the release section of the White Dwarf, for me, is almost like a flick through till I get to the
articles.
It
used to be the most exciting bit, and I do think that's a bit of a shame.
Yeah.
But it is what it is.
Because too many people leak stuff.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately...
Ruin it for everyone else.
You can do a lot to stem the leaks, but ultimately, if you're using an external printer, then you're not going to get rid of them completely, and you might as well do a better quality version of it.
Yeah,
I've always thought that, and that's what's happening.
Yeah.
So Mortarian's awesome. Tom's going to get him and paint him up, which is good because I can't be doing. I could so easily get into the Deathguard, man, so easily. And it would really fit with my dream of a big sort of chaos force that represented the different gods.
I think you should have the Primarchs. I'm encouraging you. I'm sorry, but I do think you should have the Primarchs. I mean, I will be doing a small force of Ultramarines to go around Guilliman, along with some custodians to sort of for bigger battles, because I think those characters. You can choose to play 40k in lots of ways, and one of the ways is to say this is a pivotal battle. It has a Primarch in. And the other reason is just the models, mate, are just so nice. I mean, I'm half tempted to buy Mortarion and, dare I say it, the heathen one-eyed arse hat himself, because those models are really nice. And and I want a shot of painting a big red dude. Because I've never painted.
Well, Angron will inevitably resurface. So I'll definitely get him.
If you don't get him, then you should just leave the hobby. Because you've clearly been overtaken by some kind of mind bug.
Yeah. It's interesting, actually. I've just started reading Russ, the Primarch book.
Oh, yeah. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so I read the first chapter last night.
Yeah.
And it just made me... I just can't wait for Russ to come back.
Yeah.
Oh, mate. It's going to be so cool.
It is, but
he's so cool. I think he's a lot more... So, it's interesting, because in the videos about why they chose Guilliman, they kind of said, well, Russ will just go off and start killing stuff in a rage.
Yeah.
And he'll do that until something eventually kills him.
Yeah.
But even just from this first chapter, I think he's a bit more calculating than that.
He is definitely. He's always come across as calculating.
And actually, the Space Wolves have always been that.
Yeah.
So where the Blood Angels lose their heads a bit, don't they, when they go into combat?
Yeah.
And they just go loopy. And the Flesh Terrors are like that as well. And the Black Templars are all zeal. The Space Wolves are cunning.
Yeah.
You know, and cunning strategy. And actually, in The Beast Arises, I said to you, didn't I, that there's some Space Wolves?
Yeah.
And there's a bit when it says, you know, while Space Wolves like to go in and show that they're more mighty in combat, they also relish the opportunity to defeat an enemy through cunning and strategy.
Yeah, definitely.
So, yeah, it'd be interesting. Because ultimately, he's not Angron. No,
he's not. And he beat Angron by... I mean, there's been a conversation about it online today, actually, but in the battle where he fought Angron in hand-to-hand combat, he did it in a way that he demonstrated to Angron the weakness of having those bolts in the head of his Marines by literally outmaneuvering him, so that he was left surrounded by wolves and nothing to do. And yeah, for me, one of the things I love about the Space Wolves is they come across as barbaric and savage, but actually, when you read about them, there's a kind of a cunning, thoughtful, calculated interior, especially as they get older. Where I mean, in the book Prospero Burns and those the two kind of about that in the Heresy series, they come across like that very much so. That they are boisterous and but at the same time you peel away the surface and underneath there is that calculation and that cunning that is reflected in the way a wolf pack would work, I suppose. But yeah, love them. Which that's fairly obvious. I don't think anyone's under any illusion that I don't. So we wanted to talk about, because I think we're running out of time a little bit in this section, and we could bang on about the codexes for a while because we're really excited about them. But we ought to move on to stratagems, because we want to talk about the stratagems because there's something we're really excited about.
I think what I love about them is you see a lot of stuff in there which used to either be army rules or unit rules, but are now triggered through the stratagem process.
Yes, yeah.
And I like that, and I like how flavourful they are. So there's a Khorne one which lets you attack again, and
what, in hand-to-hand combat? Because you need 3 rounds of.
Yeah, because you need 3 just in case. There's a really cool cultist one which lets you remove a unit of cultists from the table and set them back up within 6 inches of any table edge, which kind of represents like an uprising.
All right, yeah.
That's pretty cool.
But there's so many of them as well.
Oh, there's loads, isn't there? So there's one that will definitely be seeing some use with my Forge Fiends.
Yeah.
This is my gaming side coming out now. So what it does is 1 command point, and it lets you re-roll all failed to hit and to wound rolls for a demon engine or a demon vehicle.
Yeah, nothing heretical about that.
Yeah, so it's called Demon Forge, and use this stratagem in your shooting or fight phase. When a Chaos Space Marine demon vehicle is chosen to attack, you can re-roll all failed to hit and wound rolls for that model until the end of the phase. So my Forge Fiends are ranged units, because I've said in a previous podcast I was getting a bit fed up of just running across the table.
Yeah.
And my Berserkers have had enough of cutting their way into rhinos.
Yeah.
So the Forge Fiends, one of them a turn is going to be re-rolling all failed rolls to hit and to wound. That's 8 rotary cannon shots and D3 shots from the plasma maw. So yes, I'm excited about that.
And I think the key, the thing that excites me the most is the first thing you said is just how characterful they are. I mean, you can really build an army that's designed to use the specific stratagems that you want to fit that army, and then it becomes, even more fluffy. I mean, some of the ones in the Space Marine ones really, really, for me, embody the Space Marines. Like kill shot for tanks. You can use it with one of your Predators to add 1 to the wound roll and damage for all Predator attacks against a target that's a monster or vehicle. You can build a tank army around that effectively. It's
yes, yeah.
You can use them in so many ways. I just think they're going to be really exciting. And the cool thing about them is you don't know there's so many of them. There's almost no way you could predict what your opponent is going to choose. I mean, there's like a deck of cards worth of these bad boys. You're never going to be able to predict it. So when they flop it out on the table and go, look, this is what I'm going to use, unless you just can't plan for it. And I love that, because I think 40k, I think all the war games that we play, the best place to be in is where the person who wins isn't the person with the strongest army, it's the person who makes the best decisions, the person who acts like a real general and makes proper combat decisions and makes the right decisions based on effectively the math that he's seeing in front of him or her, or the situation on the table, and makes the right decision. So if someone brings out a stratagem, bangs it on the table, does something that he or she wasn't expecting, and then responds to that in a perfect way, they're the generals I like playing. That's the real, for me, the real gamers, the ones that can do that, rather than just sit down for hours and sort of meta their list, so they'll stomp over everything. And I think we're seeing less of that, thankfully, and it's going more towards the kind of making the right decision and choosing an army that will be able to respond in kind to anything.
I'm not sure that I agree with the fact that we're seeing less of that, if I'm honest. I think we might, I think you're right. There is that option to do what you said, and that's certainly the way I would prefer to play. But what I do like about the new 40k and Age of Sigmar is there is also the option to go the other way, and create those well-honed lists that maybe aren't fluffy but are powerful. And the reason I say that is, it's about having that spectrum that appeals to lots of different people. So if you're going to go to a tournament, a competitive tournament, you're looking for one thing. If you're going to go to a narrative event, you're looking for something else. Neither of those things are bad. They're just how you like to enjoy your hobby.
Yeah.
So I think it's good that it can do both. And on that note, we should probably move out of the Galaxy of War, dude.
Oh.
We need to visit the Mortal Realms.
Are you really not going to give me a place to vent my excitement about Necromunda? Are we going to move on before we do that?
I'm not even sure what that is.
Oh.
Right, guys. Necromunda. Maybe next time.
Oh, you really... Okay.
To the Mortal Realms! See you there, guys.
Welcome back, guys, and we're moving into the Mortal Realms to have a chat about Age of Sigmar. It's been no new news really for Age of Sigmar. It's been a bit of a boring month or so. Nothing exciting's happened, so I think the best we can do really is talk about my goblins that I painted a couple of months ago. Really?
I've told you before, you need to come out of that shed once in a while.
Do I? Well, where the internet's so bad I can't even change the page on the Games Workshop website. Ah!
Oh my goodness.
Because if I did, I could move to new releases and see something that's come out. But, with the absence of no new releases of any importance, we could talk about the game that you had the other day against the Wanderers and just remind everyone how that went. I think it went something like, did you draw? No.
No.
Did you win?
No.
What happened? Just tell everyone for the second time.
I lost.
Oh, what a shame. Rivers of blood running, everyone dying, and then not wood elves.
Oh, man. And I was properly bummed out to start with as well.
I bet Dan wasn't.
Oh, dear. No. So, so I played Dan's Wanderers again. I spent ages thinking about my list, especially after last time, and I was like, oh, my list was...
Yeah, because you thought it was rubbish, didn't you? Yeah.
I think my exact words were, my list was toss.
But your new list can't have been much better.
Oh, whoa. No, actually, interestingly, it's what you said in the last section. I made a tactical error.
Did you?
I did. Quite a profound one. So, basically, I went with synergies this time.
Yep.
So I had a demon character that was providing buffs to the units around him. And I went with a battalion, which gave me a 2d6 move at the start of the game. So on turn 1, I went first because I had a small number of drops because I had this battalion. So I took the first battle round, and in turn 1 I was in combat with 30 bloodletters and 3 blood crushers.
Wow.
But to Dan's credit, what he had done is set up a unit as like a roadblock against that sort of move, which is what you would expect, and that's what he did. That unit died, as you would imagine. But on turn 1, I held all 4 objectives. So we were playing Battle for the Past.
Yep.
So straight away, I opened with 9 victory points. So really, really strong start. Dan managed to get 5, I think, in his battle round 1. So one of the things I love about Age of Sigmar, and that you see, is there's no faffing around, moving backwards and forwards a little bit with a unit and all the rest of it. This is turn 1, battle round 1, and we're in combat fighting.
Yeah.
Big tactical moves have been made. We're in combat. In essence, the following round, I managed to rack up a few more points. Dan got some, but not as many as me. In turn 3, though, I made the error, which was I was looking at what Dan was scoring the most from, which was my home objective, where he had his most powerful unit. So I took 30 bloodletters and charged them across there to get into combat. Unfortunately, the Wildwood Rangers yet again showed their skill and hacked a lot of them apart. And ultimately, the rest fled the battlefield, and I lost because I lost my entire army by turn 3. Which was very bloodthirsty. But what we worked out afterwards was, if I had gone for one of the lesser objectives, although Dan would have started scoring more, my lead was such that by the end of battle round 5, it was 95% certain I would have had 28 points and he would have had 27. So yeah, it was just a simple,
You underestimated.
I made the wrong decision.
Yeah.
I made the wrong decision. I overestimated the killing power of the bloodletters, underestimated the killing power of Dan's, and I lost sight of the objective, which actually is ridiculous because I'm all about playing for the objectives. I've won multiple games. Well, my 2 most recent games in 40k, I've won because I had rhinos left alive on the objective because I understood that I needed to keep them out of the way and zoom in at the end. But it helped once we'd worked through that because I was like, oh yeah, so I could have won with that list because I was starting to get a bit frustrated that it just seemed very hard to get into combat. It's interesting because I put the question out there on Facebook this week and I've had a few responses, but I suppose it's difficult because people play against different forces depending on where they play. So I play Dan at Age of Sigmar almost exclusively, hoping to play Ben and Tom a bit more as their armies grow. But what that means is I play Dan's Wanderers, which is a heavily shooting list. High manoeuvrability, heavy shooting. So if I don't get the first turn and get into combat, my army is coming off the board fast. So without, with people obviously don't know that when they're giving their suggestions. The general feeling was that the battalions, because in the new book they've all gone up by 100 points, so around that, so spending 120 points on a battalion, over 10% of your points at 1,000 points, most people's opinion seemed to be that is too much. But without it, I can't get the boost in movement, which means I can't get into combat in turn 1. And if I can't get in and start killing stuff on turn 1, then I might as well not put figures on the board when I'm playing Dan's Wanderers. Making it worthwhile. So it is, it is situational.
I think in 1,000 points battalions, one of the stronger battalions, are worth it, but only one.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, I mean that starts getting silly then.
What I was a bit sad to see is that the ones that aren't getting used could have done with having less of a points hike. And I don't really have any good examples, to be honest, but clearly that they've just all been increased across the board comparing the 2 generals' handbooks. They've all been added about 100 points, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I'd imagine that there's going to be a raft of those which don't get used very often, that now are very, very unlikely to get used. Whereas they might have been used more had they had less of a points hike. Maybe, say, 50 points.
I think, though, perhaps along with the thing around points reductions for bigger units,
yeah,
it's encouraging Age of Sigmar to be played at a higher points level.
Yeah.
Because if a battalion is more expensive, but you're playing a 3,000 point game, for example, it's less of an issue.
Yeah, I think I'll probably take 2 or 3 for a 3,000 point game as well.
Yeah, because you were saying that before we started recording. And I think because of the likes of Path to Glory and Skirmish, there is space for Age of Sigmar to be the sort of mid to large game, isn't it, really?
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
Because there is stuff behind that.
And you can still choose to play it smaller. I mean, it's just giving...
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I think that's important because that's about encouraging people to give it a go.
Yeah.
And to be honest, if you're into this hobby, picking up a 50 quid box is unlikely to be the end of the world. I know that's not true for everyone. So please don't be there raging at your podcast app because I just said that. But it's not as cost prohibitive as by a long way as the Warhammer predecessor was.
Yeah. And you can get a lot for your 50 quid now for Age of Sigmar.
Yeah, you can. Really good stuff. It's important to say that I used my Warlord edition that came in its shiny box, which was quite funny. That made me laugh after I made a big deal about it coming in a cardboard box, and then it did actually come in a cardboard box with the Sigmar logo on, which was excellent. So I used that. The dials, fantastic, really good, especially for tracking the turns and knowing whose battle round it was. Yeah. The 9-inch markers, really, really useful because Dan's entire army was able to move off the board and come back on wherever it wanted, as long as it was outside of 9 inches of my men from one of the board edges. So that was really good. They were very useful. I love all the counters and stuff. My only thing was that in my Khorne counters, you get the ones for like Whipped to Fury, which is an ability that the Bloodstoker uses.
Yep.
And you only get one, and I think that's a shame because I used 2. So it would have been nice to have a few more of those. But yeah, loving all the gubbins in there. And I've actually now, Ben, it's got so bad. I've got so into counters and gubbins. I've actually got now boxes, one for 40k and one for Age of Sigmar, that have all my gaming stuff in. So if I'm playing a game, I just pick up that box. So where once it was a tape measure and some dice, now, I don't know, some people may remember this. Do you remember the metal case that was supposed to be for like plasma ammunition, I think?
Yes, the one that was for a model case. Yeah.
Yeah, hazard, danger of pre-detonation if used unblessed, it says. Oh no, it's for it's for bolt rounds. 200 rounds mass reactive bolt.
Yeah.
For the Umbra pattern bolt gun. So I have that box and it is full, rammed, of all the bits and pieces I would use for playing Warhammer 40,000. And I've got one the same size, and I'll put a picture up. For Age of Sigmar. So in there is all the dice, tape measures, counters, tokens, deployment markers, templates for playing Heresy, cards for your army cards that you go in, your open war cards. It's mad, but I love it. I'm so excited by the idea. My little OCD of organisation loves it, because inside you open it up and there's more little boxes, and in each one is all the different counters that you need. Or I say need.
Yeah. Need.
I'm really happy.
Oh, yeah, I can tell, man. I'm glad you're happy.
I love them. I love all those little counters. So yeah, the Warlord edition for me. Everybody knows this by now, but it was totally worth it. Actually, I don't know if I said this on the podcast or I just said this when I was talking to you, Ben, but I really chuffed that they did it aimed more at the gamer, because the collector's editions are lovely of things. They are really nice. But it's nice to have an option which is like an in-between, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. They used to do gamers editions and special editions for a lot of products a few years back.
Well, interestingly, I've got a feeling that bolt round case came from the gamers edition of the 5th edition 40k launch.
I'm not sure.
Because I'm sure you've got that box, the rulebook, and those bright green counter things.
Yes, because you did. Yeah, yes, you did. That's completely true. Yeah, because I've got it, and I've got the bright green counters, and I don't remember buying the bright green counters separately, and I was trying to work out where I'd got them from. But you're completely right.
If anyone from Games Workshop is listening, I do need a similar size box, but in an Age of Sigmar style. So whether in like a gold with an embossed hammer, which is supposed to be like a reliquary. What's it called, Ben, when you... Reliquary?
Reliquary.
Yeah. One of they.
I'm sure it's plenty of different ways of saying it, but...
Yeah. But I need one of those for all my Age of Sigmar stuff to go in. So, yeah. Loving that box. You've spent some time looking through the new handbook, haven't you? And
I have, because
up in your game on your understanding of the Mortal Realms, or the game that takes place there.
Yeah, no, definitely, because I'm feeling a little bit behind, really, and I bought the General's Handbook, and I've been working my way through it, trying to understand how you would go about collecting an army, where you get your points from, how you construct it. Yeah, enjoying it actually. On my other screen here, while I'm sat here, I have the goblins up, and I've been trying to work out how to make an army of goblins. I think I'm going to go for a 50-50 of the different goblin clans, I think. Because I'd like to have a pure goblin army with maybe a giant or something. I think we spoke about that last time. And then have a separate orc army, and then merge them together if I wished to do that. Yeah. But I've found myself quite drawn to the goblins at the moment, because I just don't think the elves are there yet for me to get excited about them, which is a shame, because I haven't painted an elf army in its entirety, even though I've always collected them. They've always been the army I've collected, because I've always focused on painting my 40k stuff, and the elves have always been a bit intimidating because of the purity of the colours and various other things, and a lot to do with the fact I'm never able to find a white spray that was any good to base coat them in. But the goblins tick all my boxes at the moment, because I find them easy to paint, I find them fun to paint, I enjoy the army. I always have enjoyed Warhammer Fantasy Orcs and Goblins, and it means whoever I play against, it will be sensible, without being chaos. And I suppose I could have gone with Death for that, because I quite liked some of the Death stuff too. But I can't really forgive Nagash for being an arsehat. So...
He has got a big hat.
Yeah, it's filled with arse, I'm afraid.
Right, okay. That's lovely.
I really hope that Sigmar does give him a good slapping at some point. He deserves it.
Yeah. This is probably a reasonable time to talk about what we were discussing just before about the different ways to play. So you and I have had some good conversations.
Yeah, because I've been really confused about it. Because for example, I mean, let's talk about where it started from. I absolutely love Triumphs and Treachery. I think Triumph and Treachery is a really, really cool mechanic, but it's stuck in the open play section of the General's Handbook. So my question to Dan was, dude, can I play this in a narrative game? And your answer to me was...
It was, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So what's interesting about the 3 ways to play is a lot of people... Some people will look at their 3 ways to play and they'll be like, well, yeah, obviously, but not everyone did, and that's why I love it, because all it's really doing is formalizing some ideas that loads of people had before, and showing that everything is valid. So if you go back to Rogue Trader, where it was really kind of like DM'd and more about the narrative, and maybe there weren't points and stuff. And lots of people say, "Oh yeah, that was brilliant," and then other people say, "No, the competition and the structure, that's brilliant." Well, actually, it's all brilliant. It just depends what you want to do, and that's why I love the 3 ways to play, because they're encouraging that. But yeah, absolutely. So for me, and I said to Ben, like, I really like having a structure to build to. It was the only thing that frustrated me when Age of Sigmar came out.
Yeah.
Not so much there wasn't points, but I just didn't know what an army should look like, because there was no structure, no force organization. And I like that. I like, if I take 40k as an example, I know that I need 6 troops for that battalion I want to do, or the brigade. And I love building it to that, and I like the challenge of fitting my army within that structure, but still theming it to how I want it. So I wouldn't particularly want to play Triumph and Treachery, or the siege battles, or with the open war cards without the structure given by match play, in as much as the points and the how many battle lines, etc. you need, because I like to know that the forces are reasonably balanced. And you can mix it up. And I think the only thing to be aware of is if you are going to an event, or you're going to play someone in a pickup game, someone you don't necessarily know, that you just need to establish what you both want out of it before you go. Don't go to something that's labelled as a tournament and then get in a pissy because somebody turned up with an army that wasn't fluffy and they flattened you off the table. Because
we've talked about this a lot, haven't we?
That tournaments are different, and then go to a narrative event, but also don't go to a narrative event with a really powerful, basically being that guy, because people will get annoyed at you because they're not there for that. They're there to enjoy themselves. And there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with either one of those things. And I've been there. I've been a store manager, and I was quite judgmental about people that played in tournaments, because I saw them as people who bought their army, probably on the cheap, just to build this certain structure, and then never bought anything else.
No.
But that's not everybody that likes tournaments, and actually... Yeah,
but I mean, if that's what those different enjoy, styles of play are one thing, but I mean, for clarity, if I was going to a tournament, if we were going to go for the by-the-book rules set, only the things in the match play section would be valid.
That's correct.
And yet, when I'm playing against you, we'll be using open war cards, Triumph and Treachery, probably a narrative battle, knowing us, with points values. Picking the bits that we like from the game. Yeah.
I mean, the important thing is just to check the event pack.
Yeah.
There'll always be an event pack, and that'll tell you what's going on.
We've just covered a little bit there. What we've often talked about, the kind of gaming contract, that idea that most of the angst that comes out of games comes because the gaming contract has been broken, and it's usually because it was never formed in the first place. I think one of the things I noticed running Vets Night was that people were just so keen to get a game that they didn't spend that 1 minute having that very simple conversation. What are you looking to get out of your game tonight? Are you...
Well, I think some people find that hard as well, maybe. Because you know when you turn up to a Games Workshop Games Night, there are other people with a similar interest to you.
Yeah.
And you put your models on the table and you play.
Yeah.
And you don't need to work very hard or be particularly good at that kind of social aspect.
No.
So the idea of having a conversation with the guy across the table about what they want, because it might be different to what you want, is probably not foremost in a lot of people's minds, but actually you often will find you'll get a lot more out of the game.
That's super important. When I came back from university and got back into the hobby, the first game I played at Vets Night was against a chap, and I had just an appalling experience, and he was there to win. That was his only consideration, and he was such an arse about it that I had another gamer come up afterwards because they could see that I was about to literally pack my army up and walk out that store and never come back. And he pulled me aside, and we had a fantastic game, and he had a stunning Space Wolf army, which helps. And I never looked back. But for me, all it would have taken is for that guy to go, what are you here for today? I'm a newbie. This is my first game of 40k in 6 years. I'm just here to sort of see how things are. Okay, let's do that. Or, sorry, mate, that's not what I'm looking for. And it would have been a completely different experience. But anyway, that's the thing in the past. I think those things are really important, though. And I think, going into stores and seeing people playing and playing in my club, that those things are getting better, actually. I don't know, maybe I'm just naive.
No, well, they absolutely, mate. You can tell just by looking at the Games Workshop's direction and the success it's bringing them.
Yeah.
I think everyone is valid.
Yeah.
If you are going to spend pounds on any product that Games Workshop makes, your point of view, how you want to approach your hobby is valid.
Yes, definitely.
If you just collect Black Library, very valid. If you are a really competitive tournament gamer who wants to keep up to date with the latest stuff, very valid. If you want to do narrative, very valid. The only consistent thing needs to be that you spend money with Games Workshop. Well, it's true, though. It's true. I don't mean to be a good person, although it helps. I'm just saying, for your point of view about the hobby to be valid to Games Workshop.
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying. It just makes me laugh.
I think people, I know it makes you laugh, but people forget it, and I see it all the time. You see these big rants about, I think my manager's a bugger because he won't let me use Forge World in the store. And, Games Workshop don't take my point of view on board, blah, blah, blah. And people just forget that the businesses need to make money to survive.
Yeah, yeah.
And store managers are judged on how much money they take through their store.
Yeah.
They can't sell Forge World.
Shame. I mean, that is a shame.
It is a shame. Yeah. It is a shame. And I don't think that if you turn up with some Forge World stuff, they should be all arsey with you. Of course not. But the honest conversation is, mate, I feed my kids and pay my mortgage by achieving by encouraging people to buy the stuff that is in my shop.
Yeah.
That isn't. I'm going into another one now.
You're going into another one. It is worth, just to close this section on the different styles of gaming, that as Games Workshop staff members, we did only ever run open play games in the store.
Well, that's true.
Every event we've ever played was just bring your unit, stick it on, and you had all sorts on every side to play with no structure.
The reason for that, though, is because
we couldn't be asked to organise it.
No, I could never actually count above the number of fingers that I have.
Yeah, well, that hasn't changed any.
So I couldn't do points. No, not really.
So, I think we could literally talk about the Mortal Realms for ages at the moment, because I think both of us are quite excited about it, but we do need to move on, unfortunately. Do you know, I'm being the herdsman today. I'm the shepherd.
You are the shepherd.
Reining you in, because otherwise we would go on for hours. So we're going to move on into the Hail to the Community section, guys, and we will see you on the other side of a short drum roll.
Well, guys, we're back now for Hail to the Community. So this is where we just look at what's going on around us, really, out in the community. Chat about it. Chat about why we're excited about it. Who would have thought, a segment from us with excitement in it.
Or well, we're excited about something.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Ben.
Yes.
What have you been up to, community-wise? Yeah, you've got that painting competition, haven't you?
I have, yeah. I'm really excited about it. I haven't entered a painting competition in such a long time. I actually realised yesterday that that I'm not really entirely sure that I've got the rules right for the painting competition. So I was told at the birthday that it was you're painting the Primaris Space Marine that you got in your party bag, which is essentially the free one on the front of the magazine. And so that's what the whole of my family's done. And I think that in itself has just been a fantastic experience. Painting Elowin's first model, memories that you don't forget really. And Joe's painted another model. So, she really enjoyed doing that. She's got well into it. She's like desperate to do well. And she's a good painter actually. And has the potential to be probably better than me if she practiced. But don't tell her that. She doesn't listen to this, so it's all right. And but if I turn up and it's any old Primaris and not just the one off the front of the box, I shall kick myself for not looking into it a bit more. And I kind of haven't really gone to the site just to make sure, just in case I am wrong. But anyway, I think
yours still looks awesome though, doesn't it?
Yeah. But I'd have probably entered Ragnar Blackmane if it was any Primaris Space Marine, which would give me a reason to finish him rather than do the Lamenter. But I'm really excited about it. I'd be quite interested to. Unfortunately, I won't be there on the day because we're away this Saturday. But we're popping down to drop the models off beforehand, and probably have a better chance to chat with the store manager without hundreds of people trying to buy something from him. So
yes.
Yeah, that'd be cool. The other thing, I think the thing that we're most excited about, and I think came out of nowhere really, didn't it, was the Warhammer Heroes Award.
Yeah.
I just think it's such a good idea, and absolutely, completely for me, embodies and represents where Games Workshop are at with their view on us as the community that surrounds their company at the moment. And there aren't many companies with a community that surrounds them outside of their employees. Games Workshop has that, and I think it's kind of understandable in a way that they've at times struggled to work out how to deal with that. But I think for me, the Warhammer Heroes is just going to be fantastic. It sounds like it's going to be driven by the community, voted on by the community, even nominated by the community. And I think the most important thing about the whole thing is that there's a massive ass medal if you win it.
Yeah.
Which is more important than anything else. It looks in the picture like you could wear it as a form of body armour, but maybe it's probably not quite that big. I'm hoping it is though. Like a gold.
I really like that it's driven by the community.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because as with all things, you get the vocal minority often on the internet, and I just really like the fact that this thing is driven by the community. Yeah. And so people that might otherwise not come to the attention of Games Workshop or make it really widely known that they have certain views or what have you, I've got a chance.
Yeah.
I suppose. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, definitely.
Really cool.
I'm really excited about the effect that will have on people, because I think there is an awful lot of work that goes into doing some things in this hobby, and you don't get, for a lot of it, much back in a kind of physical, financial, or notoriety kind of way, as in rank or anything like that. So, and Magic the Gathering used to have, Wizards of the Coast used to have people who effectively were volunteers would go out and promote their product.
Yeah.
Press gangers, or something like that. And
press gangers is
Privateer Press.
Privateer Press do press gangers.
Yeah.
And the Hawk War Games, they got a similar thing.
Well, I think a lot of them have stopped now, which is disappointing, but in some ways.
Well, Games Workshop used to have the Outriders in Europe as well.
Yeah.
That used to do it. But yeah, it's
anyway,
great.
What I think this is going to be able to do is pat those guys and girls on the back and say, look, well, we really appreciate what you're doing, all the hard work you're doing. And more importantly, here's a massive medal. Because I'm not driven by shiny gubbins at all. So relatively short in the community section, I think.
Yeah, we've got some exciting bits coming up community-wise, haven't we? So
yeah,
we've got I'm visiting Games Workshop Coventry in November because they are moving. Dave Wright, absolute legend, colleague of mine when I was a store manager in the Severn Valley area, which obviously the Severn Valley still exists, but that grouping doesn't anymore. So it'd be really, really good to see Dave. He's not moving very far, and there is the opportunity to get the limited edition models in there as well. So I'm looking forward to that. And we're both entering a tournament at Big. An event on the 19th of November. So we've got that coming up as well to talk about. So yeah, we've got some cool community bits coming up, haven't we?
Yeah, definitely. Really excited about that tournament. Actually,
we'll talk a bit more about those, more detail about what we're going to be doing to prepare for those, etc. nearer the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, for now, thank you, community.
Yeah.
We're off into the last section, which is Into the Wilds, guys. We'll catch you in the wilds.
Hi guys, we're back for our final section, Into the Wilds, and this time we really are going into the wilds, into the wasteland of the apocalyptic future with the upcoming release of Fallout Wasteland Warfare, which I am so excited about. I'm probably equally as excited about this as I am about Necromunda. Well, no, seriously.
That's a lot of excitement, dude.
The Fallout games are probably, apart from the Skyrim and Morrowind Elder Scroll games, they're probably my favourite computer games. They are stunning games. And when they released Fallout 3, probably 7 years ago, I think it was just one of the best games I'd ever played, frankly. And for that to be realised in very, very high quality miniatures, in a board game that sounds really, really exciting, it's just absolutely amazing.
So is it a board game? Is it?
It is
or a tabletop.
It's a tabletop miniatures game. It's made by, I don't know how to pronounce this, but Modifius. It's got 3 ways to play as it happens. So you can either play it as essentially you create a gang, very much like Necromunda, or like a crew of you guys who are going out into the apocalyptic wasteland. And you can either play it as a solo mission against an AI deck, where there's a card deck which generates actions for the beasties and other people or mutants or whatever you come across in the wasteland. I guess a bit like how Silver Tower runs its kind of enemies. Oh, yeah. So you can play it solo. You can play it cooperatively against the same AI deck, or you can play it, one gang versus another. You can collect resources and upgrade your gang, and you can have it in campaigns. It just sounds really good. It sounds really, really good. It sounds like a lot like Necromunda. And given that they're going to be both released in the same month, it's going to be really difficult to know which one to go for, actually. I don't think I'm going to be able to convince the Bank of Ben to let me do both, but it looks like it's a smallish game, so that, as in, I'm not expecting armies. I'm expecting the gangs to be more like sort of 5 to 10 models, and the enemies don't need to be many of those either, really, because everything in the wasteland that survived is a character in its own right. So I'm expecting them to be tough and difficult to kill, and not hordes unless you're fighting ghouls. So very, very, very excited about it. If you haven't had a chance to check it out, you can head over to their Facebook page or their website. And at the moment, the community is really buzzing about it on their Facebook page. They're making a shed ton of scenery ready to play the game, and some of it looks absolutely fantastic. So one of the things about Fallout is the design aesthetic is very much kind of a 1930s, 40s design aesthetic with a nuclear kind of feel to it. So you get the kind of big curvy cars, and strange kind of advertising that you got with the 30s, mixed in with that kind of futuristic technology. So a lot of the guys who've been making the scenery have really captured that. And one of the cool things that they're doing about the game is they're releasing little scenery pieces, things like, Dan won't have a clue what I'm talking about now, but the new Coca-Cola vending machine is a model that they are making. The cars, the wrecked cars, they're models that they're making. The robots are in there as well, so like Mr. Gusty and things like that, they're doing those. It's going to be amazing. I'm absolutely buzzing for it.
Do you know anything about like the game mechanic? Or
No, I don't. I've been looking. It looks like a fair bit came out in one of the local conventions, but I don't really know about the game mechanic yet. If I'm being honest, that's partly because I get a bit sidetracked with the pretty models. So when I go onto the pages, I'm like, ooh, look at that, and I've lost my way very quickly. Yeah, but I'm really excited about it. I'm very excited about it, as you can probably tell. Particularly excited about seeing some of those models realised. So the Brotherhood of Steel, the Power Armour. Out of all of the versions of Power Armour, in inverted commas, the only one that has ever, for me, come anywhere near being as cool as Space Marine armour is the Power Armour from Fallout. It's very, very good. It's worth pointing out for those of you who play the game, it's going to be based on the Fallout 4 background, which all settings, so it's going to have the Institute and those android guys in there as well. And it doesn't sound like you've got much to say on this at all, Dan, so it's just been my monologue for the last 10 minutes.
Well, as I said to you when you mentioned it, I don't even have a games console anymore, actually. Basically, if I'm playing computer games, I could be painting miniatures, so I like to paint miniatures.
Yes.
But I have looked at it, and the quality of the stuff is fantastic. It's really good. I was quite interested when you mentioned it as well to find out who was making it, because recently, just thinking about other successful computer games that have been attempted to be ported over, looking at Halo, and obviously people may or may not know that Spartan Games, who make Halo, unfortunately have ceased trading.
Yeah.
And I remember when I saw that they were going to have Halo, initially I thought that was going to be a massive thing. But Ben and I were talking, and I think you get lots of wargamers who play computer games. But I think the real trick is trying to get people that play computer games to then play war games. But that's a big ask, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
because that's bringing. The great thing about being able to do that is bringing new people into the wargaming pool. The people that will spend money on wargaming miniatures.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, all that's constantly happening is that dilution.
Yeah.
Of that pool. So interesting. But then I suppose with a few of the companies going, whilst that is disappointing, there's the companies that are left should make more money, I suppose.
Yeah.
And therefore be able to produce better quality stuff.
Yeah.
But is this Kickstarter one, Ben?
I don't think so. No, they're no, I don't think they are. I certainly never saw a Kickstarter for it, and I haven't seen any Kickstarters for it now. But they do a Star Wars game as well. So, not Star Wars game, sorry, Star Trek game, which looks quite interesting. And I think that they've done this off of the success of that, which is pretty cool. It's a big ticket for them to pick up. Bethesda is the software company that make Fallout, and they're not small by any stretch of the imagination. Their IP is pretty robust. So Fallout universe and the Elder Scrolls universe are a big business, really. They've made a lot of games based on them, and for them to give that shot to a company and say, "Here, have a go," I think that's a pretty big deal. It's not as big a deal as Star Wars last week, but it is a big deal, and I think one of the benefits of this is it can be a really small game, mate. I mean, a lot of the enemies you face in the Wasteland are quite powerful. So you could very easily have 10 models per side, and that'd be quite a thing. So I don't think they need to put much work into it working. And I think one of the things I'm excited about is I haven't seen another game which has inspired that kind of building ethos before the game's even come out. I mean, people are literally
that's great to see,
building whole tables of Wasteland ready to play the game on. So I think they will build the hobby community will build their universe around whatever they give them. And I think once those models are out, I don't think it matters if the company stays around for that long. I hope they do, and I hope they continue to make lots of models. But people will keep playing this for a long time because there are people out there who are absolutely obsessed with the Fallout universe. And I've got to say, I mean, I think I probably counted on that list. And Joe is as well. We both love the Fallout universe. To the extent we were thinking of getting a Nuka-Cola poster to go in our house. It's serious. It's a really cool place. I've listened to whole genres of music based on, because you wear this thing on your wrist called a Pip Boy, and it's a piece of equipment that you get when you go to live in a vault, and on it you kind of has all your missions and your quests and what have you, but it also has a radio. And for the Fallout 3 and Fallout 4 and Fallout Las Vegas, the style of music on that radio is very 1930s, 40s. So I started listening to crooners based on, wandering around the wasteland, listening to Nat King Cole. It's just amazing. Because it just captures it captures people's imagination. It does. And I think it's one of those universes which has the potential to keep people in it. And it will pull people around, from other places in the hobby to come into it and do something with it. And the wasteland, like I said, the scenery-wise, there's so much potential there. So much potential. So I'm expecting to see some really cool stuff. And I think we will be posting some of that as models of the day. The scenery to start with, but then the models themselves in the future. It's going to be ace. Absolutely ace. The other thing I wanted to quickly talk about, if you don't mind me adding a little bit on the end down.
No, not at all.
The Bones Kickstarter. So Reaper Miniatures Bones Kickstarter. It's Bones 2. I had never heard anything of Bones 1. I think when I saw Bones 2, of a dark, hidden memory of coming across it at some point in the past wandered through my mind. But effectively what it is flexible plastic models for role-playing games. Mm-hmm. Namely Dungeons and Dragons, and the Kickstarter I think is $100, so whatever that equates to, about 70 quid, and you get a metric buttload of models like goblins and the basic stuff like orcs and goblins, and the names have gone out of my head, it's too late now, but you get a dragon, you get models to play characters with, you get townspeople, you get the Gribblies, you get all just tons of stuff. And the reason I'm mentioning it is because I started role-playing in a group again after not done it for a long time last week, and Ross had Bones 1, and he was able to pull out models for anything that he threw at us. A really, really good resource to have. And I wish I had 70 quid around that wasn't being spent on Necromunda scenery to pick a set of it up. So
too much awesome.
Yeah, there is just too much awesome. So yeah, if anyone is interested in a reasonably priced, I think, very robust, as in you could literally grab them and shove them in your rucksack with no care or attention. Models to play not Lord of the Rings, Dungeons Dragons, or a role-playing game of that ilk like Pathfinder or whatever. Bones 2 Kickstarter by Reaper Miniatures. And that's my ramblings.
Sounds good one. Sorry. I have listened eagerly to try and pick stuff up, really, because that's some stuff in there that I'm not really aware of.
Yeah, and
gone through, so that's pretty
when we
cool.
post the podcast, I'll post links for Doofius, and I'll post links to the Bones 2 Kickstarter, so that people know where to find it as well. Although if you just type those things in, they'll come up. So, are we going to call it a day there, buddy?
I think so. Time is rolling on this evening, isn't it?
Yeah. The
I
drop
think as
pod
is
has
customary.
landed.
Yeah, the drop pod is kind of ambled to a stop. No.
With Ben leaning out the window going, "Ah, I'm a devious!"
Yeah. As is customary, really important that we say thank you.
Yes.
It really is. I'm just looking now at the Podbean app, and it's showing that we've had 768 downloads, which is phenomenal. Thank you very, very much, guys. 176 likes on Facebook. Again, amazing. You know, it just really is really great to see such support and the interaction as well. A lot of the retro posts recently, people seem really keen on. The gaming posts really keen on. People have been sharing things, which is fantastic. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Really, really do. I think we have little moments, don't we, Ben, where we're like, what?
Yeah. It's taken us by surprise. We say that every week, though. It still takes us by surprise. We'd quite literally get to every time we sit down to do a podcast and go, oh, that'll be it. You know, this will be the one. They'll stop listening to it. But yeah, we haven't yet. We're good.
We hope. So, thank you very much as ever, guys. We'll be back with you in a couple of weeks' time, talking about some more awesome stuff. In that time, enjoy your hobby. Have a good couple of weeks, and we'll catch you soon. Cheers, guys.
Bye, guys.